and the big guy Bob, Joe and Nancy, and Jim, and Luke, and Val, Carolyn, Jim, Chris, Aaron. Here was Chris and Kate. We're in the barn with the luncheon. I'm hungry. How about you guys? Oh yeah, oh yeah. Kate, you hungry?
Yeah!
Yeah. Uh-oh, hello.
How you doing? Nice to see you. Good to hear all about you.
And I've got Mary Blair on tape. There she is.
You should have seen him whistling around my teeth when he was first drive. You could just get. I haven't
Well, see what I like is Terry has the ones that just start around.
Where is Jason?
And here's the dad. Here's the guy with his Florida State sweatshirt on and Duke hat. Got them all covered, huh?
He's got Stetson underwear on.
He's got Stetson underwear,
The Clemson
Socks.
Clemson socks,
I think the
Georgia
Clemson,
Georgia Tech wristband.
Georgia Tech, yeah, whatever.
Dance and sing the doxology.
Here we are eating. Everybody having a good time inside the barn at the Grove.
That we were coming to do this today, and her dad was originally from Beaufort, South Carolina. Oh, really? From an old Navy.
Here's everybody out here eating their lunch. Hello. How is it?
Good.
Good. Hey there. Uh-oh. Here's the whole family. Everybody's drinking beer except for the Pratt Daniels, who are
Hiding their beer in the barn.
trying to be slim and trim for the next millennium.
No sugar in beer.
Trying to pare down to only 50% over our marriage weight.
Actually, almost every week somebody says, ceremony thing or what are you gonna have a history
Tell
lesson?
about the property.
Okay.
So I should have written some of this down because I'll probably wander, and if I do, say, do like this, hurry on. In 1900, my mother's parents moved here. And so we're probably pushing it a little bit, but maybe not much because I don't know what month in 1900. So we're not pushing it too much to say 100 years. And they came from Moss Bluff, which is a small community just down the road from Young Life Southwind Camp. And there's a cemetery with some real old graves, and then plus new ones too at the Baptist Church down at Moss Bluff. And of all the old ones, almost everybody buried there are our relatives. So Grandma's name was Rebecca Ellen, and her maiden name was Fort. And we do have a history book that a woman in Wurzdale wrote a couple of years ago. And so we actually have more about that family than any of the other families. His name was Charles William Smith. But she always was called Duck, and he was always called Willie. And with a beautiful name, Rebecca Ellen, she was called Duck her whole life because when she was a little girl and first started to walk, she looked like a duck. And so they were Duck and Willie. And so they moved here, and my grandmother had been married before and had 3 children, and her husband, his name was Jefferson Driggers, and her husband died of pneumonia when he was still in his 20s, and she was left with 3 little kids. And so then she married my grandfather, and then they had my mother and 2 boys. So there was a girl and 2 boys in each of the families. And so my uncle Edgar was born here, the youngest. But mother was 6 years old when they moved here. And there was a 2-story house up on the hill. And it was, the main part of the house was two-story, living room and bedroom, and then a front porch, and then upstairs there were 2 bedrooms upstairs, and then there was a long porch out this way, and then there was a separate wing that was the dining room and the kitchen and the pantry, and they had houses like that a lot. If you've read your history lessons, they did it because if a fire starts in the kitchen area, then they can save part of the house. Well, unfortunately, many years later, they weren't able to do that. And so then when they first moved here, things were pretty hard because there were only a few orange trees just around the house, and all the other trees that then later came here, Grandpa cleared the land and planted the trees. And they were pretty much self-sufficient. About all they really bought was sugar and coffee and flour and tea, because they raised pretty much everything else that they had. They raised vegetables, and then they canned in fruit jars. They canned, and then they really didn't have very much beef, but they had a lot of chickens and they had pork, and they killed the hogs and then cured the hams. And then back of the house, there were 2 little buildings that were connected. One was called the smokehouse and one was the syrup house. And the smokehouse was made out of logs because they would hang the hams up in the smokehouse, and it had wooden floor, and then they would have smoke that would come up to cure the hams from different kinds of wood. And then you had the logs so that there was a space like this so that the smoke could escape through there, and then they would have the hams there. And then on the side of that was a wash area, and there was a big boiling wash pot and then wash tubs. And then in the syrup house, they grew sugar cane, and then they made their own syrup. And they used the syrup in place of what we would use sugar in a lot of things. So they also kept their canned goods there. And they raised Irish potatoes and sweet potatoes, and they stored them in pine straw. And so they would have potatoes all year round. And so they really were pretty self-sufficient. They had the citrus, and then down in the back, next to the lake, in that area where that was cleared, there were never any orange trees ever planted. That's where they raised the strawberries. And there was a packing shed down there where they packed the strawberries, and they took them to market. And then our 4 kids remember when the barn was still there, and there are a couple pictures in there if you want to look at pictures of the barn. Bob took one and Ed took one before we tore it down because it was starting to fall down, and we wanted to save as much of the barn lumber as we could. And it was on the side from the house. And then back of that was the chicken yard where they had chickens. And then back over there was a packing house, and they had a small citrus packing house where they would pack oranges and take into town to sell. And then they did their own hay. They had haying, and they had this hay baler that would be in some kind of antique museum now, because they'd hitch up a horse. They'd cut the grass and put it in, and then the horse would pull it, and it would pull it together in the bale, and then they put wire around it. It's not like the rolled hay that you see out in the farms, out in the fields these days. But things were really primitive. They had kerosene lanterns and oil lamps. Kerosene was called coal oil then. And just happened. I don't know how they got there really, but on top of the refrigerator, well, you've seen the lanterns, like they used outside, but then there was the lamp like they used, and when you went from one room to another, you took the lighted lamp with you. And outdoor johns. So things were really pretty primitive, and life was pretty hard. And they had a horse and wagon, and everywhere you went, they didn't have buggies. They just had a wagon with a wagon seat, because they had to have the wagon so they could haul stuff too. So things were really primitive. And down the road, on the way to DeLand, in what now is Ricky Huff's Grove, there was a school. and they had a school teacher, and it went the first through the 8th grades. And so all the kids out here went to school there. And but my dad had to quit when he was in the 5th grade, and because his father died when he was only 9 years old. And Daddy grew up down the road where our cousin Lewis Huff lives now. The house where he lives in was torn down quite a number of years ago. But by the time I was born, Grandma and Grandpa were living pretty good compared to farmers, which we would think would be, you know, awful these days. But they had what was called a Delco plant. And it was a little tin building out from the house. And I always thought it was real neat when something happened to the Delco plant, because it was down in the ground and you went down a ladder. And then you had to go down and fix it. But it was a kerosene-driven motor, and it pumped water. And they actually had an electric refrigerator, but it didn't anything what we would call. All it did was keep food cool. I mean, it didn't do any freezing. They never had ice. Unless like later on they'd go to town and get like 25 pounds of ice. But the refrigerator, and then they had a flush toilet, which was, you know, really pretty much, because my other grandmother down the road always had a path in a little building, the outhouse. And then the first car they got about 1918, and people out here began getting cars, and so that was a little more uptown. And then in 1938, my grandmother died. And then in 1941, on a cold, windy day, the house caught fire. My grandfather had a housekeeper, and he was taking a nap downstairs and she upstairs. And there was a wood stove in the kitchen, and the flue caught fire. And there was a small tenant house that a couple that worked for him lived in, and they saw it, and they got the fire department from DeLeon, but they didn't have enough water. They weren't able to save anything. So the only thing that was saved were things that were in the living room. The hall tree that we have in our house, and the clock that's in the dining room. The old sofa that Ed and Joe have down in one end of their living room, and the 2 chairs that matched it, Jim and Carolyn have. Grandpa's rocker Bob has. So some things were saved, but not very much. And the pictures that were on the wall of the 2 sets of grandparents Ed and Joe have. So we do have a few things that were part of the house. And then there was a house here where that a family named Jacob had lived in, and but they had moved to town, and so Grandpa moved here. And he was an old man. He only lived a little over a year after that. And so he just said, "Oh, I'm an old man. I'm just going to go to the secondhand furniture store and just buy some stuff that I can get by with." Well, some of the stuff he bought to get by with, Bob and Valerie have the dining table. Ed and Joe, in fact, I think it might be in Kate's bedroom right now. The table that's like a desk. And when Ed and Joe were going to get married, I took 4 oak chairs up, and when we turned them upside down, the price tag he paid on them was $4 a piece. And that was in 1942. And so then the property had been left to the 6 children, and so the 2 youngest uncles wanted to sell theirs right away, so my parents bought it. And then another uncle then wanted to sell, and then another one sold, and then finally my aunt, who lived down at the corner, and Jim mentioned when we were coming this morning that he remembered Aunt Maggie's house, which was a 2-story. She was Aunt Maggie Clifton. She was the oldest one of the 6 kids, and that's how they knew where the turning off place was, at Aunt Maggie's house. And so then that's how my parents came to own all of it, because they bought the other 5 out. And so then my grandpa did 40 years, 41 years, I guess we figured, and my dad 28 years, and so then I did my watch for 30 years, and unfortunately the weather helped me along, and I sent it down the tube for you. So that's sort of the history of the property.
You did mention the sugar grinding mill was right over there.
Well, no, actually it
Was it there?
was originally down here, down the
Later
hill.
on, it was over here.
And they had this, it was a great big metal cooker. And they put the cane juice. Grandpa always had cane grinding the Friday and Saturday after Thanksgiving, so the grandchildren could come, so we wouldn't be in school. And you wouldn't believe when they ground the cane, they had a grinder, and then the horse went round and round and round and pulled it so that the cane went through the grinder, and then they would put the barrels of juice then in the big cooker, and use a real hot fire, and then it evaporates all of the juice from the cane juice and made syrup. And then when they were going to kill hogs, then they did it down there because they heated water in the big vats.
Did he grow or buy the cane?
Huh?
Did he grow or buy the cane?
No, he grew it.
You're the cane.
Yeah, and then you saw Ricky this morning. Well, Ricky's brother Joey is the only one anywhere around anywhere out here now. Because when you kids were young, you used to come out with grandma, with your grandparents, and go to other places where they were making syrup. But Joey's the only one anywhere around.
Still does
And
cane.
he has
Still
our
makes-
cooker and something, I don't know, our grinder disappeared somewhere along the way, and my Uncle Sam's grinder, his children gave that to Joey so that the old cane grinding could continue out in this area. So Mother and Daddy went to the country school, and then my dad grew up in the house down the road. So they had known each other, and people out here, because my Uncle Henry, just older than Mother, married one of the Clifton girls over here, because when you only got a horse and buggy, you can't go very far to find a husband or a wife. So there were a lot of, so there were, people that were related to me on both sides. Some people would be a second cousin on one side and a first cousin on the other. And so that's why Dan said when we got married, he didn't dare say anything about anybody in Volusia County because I was related to them. So that's kind of the story of this place that just started out with two people that were very poor and just worked
Stubborn.
hard.
And stubborn. Because they would not have, they would not have weathered the storm. They had been stubborn.
So any questions? Any memories any of y'all have you want to share about
I was just
anything?
going to say that the house you're talking about that your grandfather moved into after the fire
Right here
is,
is where the
is-
barn is now.
but that's the house that when we were growing up that we knew as the house at the Grove.
Right. Because it burned when
It still has furniture in it, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
Oh yeah.
it had the furniture in it that Grandpa
The
Yeah,
Victrola,
that Grandpa had bought.
When did that burn?
Record player.
Yeah, I remember
this
that.
one didn't burn.
Oh,
This
yeah.
we tore this one down so we could build a new barn.
Okay.
But y'all used to play down here.
Remember the time?
Yeah, and the tractor garage right down here where you went down, that was the garage for that house.
I remember that because that's where the Jeep and the tractor were kept, right?
Yeah, when
Jeep
you
was
were
on
little.
one side and the tractor was in the
Remember the time when
that house
came
still
out here
there
with your
when Jason was?
grandfather, Heather, and
I remember the house.
he had a shotgun with him?
I think it was still there
And
when,
you
They
let
put us
you
in
guys
early
fire the
80s.
gun, and Bob was just a
Right, so
small,
they wouldn't,
small
Mr.
pipe,
Smith probably wouldn't
and
remember.
he gave it to him, and he
Do you
went
remember the old
around.
house that was
When
there?
you
When
got
you-
the barn you showed it.
Bob Farmer went around like this and everybody hit the
Bob
dirt.
went around like this, and everybody hit the deck.
He had a second barrel. It's a double barrel shotgun, and he had another one loaded.
And
Trying to take out the family.
when the kids were little, we used to come out. We used to come out here to do Christmas trees. And I remember once, I don't know, Dan must have been out of town or something, or busy. And so the kids and I came, and so we went out on Arredondo Grant. It was called Spring Garden Road, then headed like toward DeLeon. And so there was a guy that had grown up out here that was a deputy sheriff then, and so we were looking to see which tree we wanted to cut, and I said, oh, there's Robert Daugherty, and so Daddy said, oh yeah, guys, we're gonna get arrested because there's a deputy sheriff. They were so scared they thought we were gonna get put in jail for stealing Christmas trees.
Now, Alan Fort, we've learned, was born in South Carolina,
Yeah.
and he moved to Alabama, and then he moved to Florida in the late 1840s.
And that began the forts of Florida.
And so the forts of Ocala is where, that's grandmother's side of the family.
Yeah, and then Grandpa's name Smith. 2 generations back, his family had lived in Ohio, and he and 2 brothers. No, it was Grandpa's father. Was adopted, and the name was originally Mueller with the German spelling, but some people named Smith adopted him, and so the original family had German background. So that's where on our side, because Dan has German background.
You know, I met some people from Darlington who live in Greenville now, and I asked them if they know any forts, and they said that forts are all over Darlington County.
Huh. Well, we have the name of the cemetery where Alan's parents were buried. Well, Alan's mother died. He was an only child. The one that left South Carolina, went to Alabama, and then to Marion County. And he was an only child because his mother died in childbirth. And so we know the cemetery and the name of what the name of the church was at that time. And one of these days, when I get old enough to retire, I'm going to spend more time doing some genealogy stuff. Because we really can do a more complete record, and I am doing like a chronological thing, but I'm also doing sort of just kind of a written history as I go along of each generation, because she did a wonderful job on this book. And so it goes generation, each generation. And I've got all the stuff written down to get to for all of y'all.
What is the name of the book?
The Forts of Florida.
Forts of Florida. And what's her name?
All my copies of that book,
Huh?
you get more than one copy of the book.
No.
I think the kids might like
What is her, well, I could order it though. What's her name?
I can get that to you. But you know, I mean, you're welcome to use this one. The family sort of scattered. Some of them stayed in the Ocala area. Grandma was from a big family. She wasn't the oldest daughter, but she was named Rebecca for her mother.
And that was Alan's wife, right?
No, that was Robert's. Alan was way back.
Alan was in the 1840s.
Alan was three generations before that.
Before your grandmother?
Yeah.
Rebecca Allen was 18.
But my mother's dad, and two of his brothers and a brother-in-law were all in well, there were a lot of them that were in a Civil War company from Marion County, and two of his brothers and a brother-in-law were killed, and in the Battle of Chickamauga, right outside Chattanooga, a bullet went through his right hand, and he had trouble with it for the rest of his life. But there's a lot of stuff in that book that I never knew about, because we used to go over to Weirsdale and over in that area to visit relatives, because my grandpa had two brothers that lived in Ocklawaha, and I need to go to the cemetery there to see them. One was named Johnny and one was named Andrew, except he was always called Andrew, and he was married to a midget. So that's the regular Ocklawaha cemetery. They were Baptist, a regular Baptist. So there's a lot of history over there. But the only one that I know of directly right now and that I see is a retired professor from the music school at Stetson, and his name is Robert Ford the Third.
So she's second cousin to him.
And his grandfather, who I remember very well, and he was a state senator at one time.
Married you.
And my grandmother were brother and sister, and so, but he's about the only one of the family that I see right now. Anybody else have any memories they want to share? Crazy stuff you remember?
I just
Something I
remember,
never heard about.
I remember shooting squirrels out of these trees.
I remember driving out with Granddad in his truck and him smoking unfiltered Luckies.
You what?
Driving out to the Grove with Granddaddy, just the two of us.
Yeah, well,
Who was
With his-
smoking the Lucky?
At that point, he was.
Well, unfortunately, he smoked too many.
Yeah.
yeah.
I remember
Right.
coming out here one time, and I don't know if it was Jim or Bob, but they were shooting the gun, and it had quite a kick to it, and it knocked them flat on their fanny, whichever one it was. They probably remember which one it was.
I'm thinking
They're not gonna tell.
And Granddaddy just howled. He thought that was just the funniest thing.
He enjoyed bringing us out here.
One
Yeah,
time or
he
another,
did.
it was each of us.
Was that you, Dale?
All of you did that, huh?
He used to speed up when we tried to cut the corner. Is that what you mean?
No, I'm talking about when you had to shoot, when you shot the gun, it flung you back onto your
That's the
fanny.
time
I think all of us got.
I think
Probably
that was
all-
another
everybody
one.
got to do
This was
that.
another one when they were all, yeah, when he went around.
I
But we
remember
used to,
shooting the gun.
jump
Maybe
off
that
the
wasn't
truck.
something girls weren't allowed to do.
We used to jump off the truck, knowing that he was going to turn left, go down by the lake, and try to cut the corner and jump back on the truck.
Yeah.
And he would pretend like he didn't see us, and then right when we got ready to jump back on the truck, he would speed up. We couldn't catch the truck. He'd leave dust in our face.
Well, and then there was a summer that two brothers were farm workers, and one brother was a farm worker supervisor.
And who was the supervisor?
Is that you?
Yes.
Video running.
Which
Yes,
one was
he
the
was my
supervisor?
Well, as I remember, supervisors did about 90% of the work.
Who was that?
How I remember.
I remember he got paid for it. But that was like a government job, you know. The guy that works less gets paid more.
He's like the guy in the DOT. There's a lot of standing around on his shovel.
I mean, that's the story in the Times, right?
As I remember it, we were supposed to
He learned
head.
how to lean
We're-
on the shovel.
We were supposed to hedge the trees all the way to the top, and you guys got it by about the by the bottom two branches, and the rest of it I had to
I
do.
remember Joanne drove by one day when we were all asleep on the mats out here. He said, "Yeah, those city boys, they're working hard."
When I told him we'd been out here since 5 o'clock in the morning, he didn't believe us, did he?
Yeah, June is Ricky's dad. He's now 86 years old, and he grew up in Archer over near Gainesville. And when he was about 15, he got in with a crowd that got into some trouble for stealing something. So his mother packed him off over here to live with my daddy's mother, grandma down the road. And so he'd be kind of back and forth, but he was really almost like a brother. And my dad was sort of like another dad to him. And so Ricky and his two brothers all live out here. That's part of my dad's family that's still out here. And none of my mother's family is out here anymore. My Aunt Maggie's son, Prentice, lived in the house over here, the one that you come by just before, on the left, just before you turn.
He died about
And,
5 years ago.
but he and his wife have both died now. So I mean, there aren't any of the old Smith relatives that live out here anymore.
That's history lesson number 1.
That's all you have to suffer.
That
Go,
was good.
go.
Hey.
Now's the time.
Somebody write that.
A little bit to Mom's parents. And that's where we started, because we didn't know that much history, and also we could only write a certain number of verses on the car on the way here. So we need you to join in on the what do you call it? Refrain. Thank you. The refrain, and the first two times it goes Elmer Tedder, King of the Grove Property. So that's the first two times you sing the refrain. And the last two times you
We
sing
know the tune already.
last time you sing the refrain, two times you sing the refrain, it's Corky Daniels, Queen of the Grove Property. Now sung to the tune as best as we could remember of Davy Crockett. And for those of you too young to remember Davy Crockett on TV, you'll catch on. All right, here we go. Elmer Tedder, King of the Grove Property. There once was some property, wild and free. Elmer and Edith said, this is where we'll be. It was early in the 20th century, when they were only about 23. Elmer Tedder, King of the Grove Property. He planted the grove by the light of the moon. There were trees sprouting up very soon. Oranges and grapefruit were picked at noon. Perkins Highway became a boom. Elmer Tedder, King of the Grove Property. They had a daughter in 1925. She was the cutest and smartest girl alive. She played the bassoon and learned chemistry. She got her first job in Mulberry. Corky Daniels, Queen of the Grove Property. Corky said, Dan, you're the one. She had a cute daughter and 3 smart sons. Well, one was. In the mid-80s, the trees done froze. But loyal Corky took care of the grove. Corky Daniels, Queen of the Grove Property. One more time. Corky Daniels, Queen of the Grove Property. Well, it's sort of on backside of whatever's in the glove compartment.
Oh, he was the foreman.
Actually, we were arguing over here which one was the one smart son.
It's a cute son.
We were trying to make Nancy cute and smart, but we just couldn't fit all the
say.
Smart daughter and 3 sons.
Well-
Cute daughter and 3 smart sons. That means I got a little left out on the.
Well, at first we had you smart and us cute, but see, that didn't work. And handsome, we had too many.
Actually, I think that does work pretty well.
For a while there, it was the smart, cute daughter and the smart, cute oldest son and the other 2 sons. We couldn't fit that all into one verse.
We can make him superintendent. That would get him fired.
My boss.
But only if I come to your city and you're the chairman of the board.
Then they'd be moving quick, a superintendent's moving.
First, I gotta let you do something. You can sit this chair and I want to take a picture of y'all. I know.
Quick, get my camera up there.
I know. You don't want to do it, but you got to together. Put together in the same chair.
Same chair.
Yeah, I like it. You. Oh, okay.
That is
Yeah, pulling tight on them. Just get their faces and their shoulder, like a headshot. Get down.
I know.
Okay.
I don't have room right now.
Oh, you put your hand in my camera.
Okay, I'm gonna do another one. Get close together again. I can't believe
Stay there for me too.
Vines and look at them city boys.
I don't remember that. I do remember trying to get you guys out of bed and going. We'd arrive out here about 9 o'clock.
Will you put it on the table so you can get all
Thank goodness.
I can already know.
Sam, I'm a good consumer, Mom. I know this stuff.
Here you go. Lights.
Okay, you ready?
Uh-huh.
Oh, Mary Claire.
The stand's there. Ow.
Mary Bell, you need to ask your parents for the ornaments. They're about $8 a piece. The tree was very inexpensive, but the rest of it's pretty pricey.
You can put them on your American Girl. Or I can use them.
Over there. They want to take a picture before.
We can go full of fruit.